Hi, this is Peggy from Raw. So today our guest is Chris Lamoureux, who's the co-founder and COO of Veriday. So Veriday provides solutions specific for the digital transformation in the financial services space. They are a leader in digital engagement for financial advisors. So thank you so much for being with us today, Chris.
Thank you, Peggy. Great to be here.
That's great. So let's get started right away. So first question, actually, from your perspective, what do you think will be the lasting impacts of COVID on the financial services industry?
Wow, that's a big one, Peggy. And I've been connecting with our clients, obviously doing research in what is happening going in Canada, North America, and the globe. And I see many impacts, but I'll comment on just a few. I think the first one I would comment on is the employee experience. And it was surprising to me how many people that I talked with said it's actually gone surprisingly well. The ability to work from home, we've accomplished that goal, we're productive, we're doing the work that we should be doing. And I didn't really expect that. I thought they'd have more challenges. So then my follow-on question is, though, can you take it to the next level? If you're going to actually work from home and you're going to stay at home, what other things are you not doing that you should be doing? Or is that leading to a permanent shift in staying at home and working at home more permanently? I've heard anecdotes of in the order of 30% of a workforce is never going to return back to the office in the way that they did before. Particularly the big firms in banking and that are in downtown offices with large skyscrapers, they've got significant considerations to work through and think through that exercise. So employee experience to me is the first one I would touch on. The second one I would touch on would be the client experience, the interaction between a client and the financial services organization. And traditional models have not been available in the same way or not as readily available. Just think of going into a branch. A lot of branches are shut down. So what's that forcing a client to do? It's forcing them to go to another branch not near their area. How does an elderly person, as an example, do that? They need that convenience, and they're not digitally savvy. And so I think we're fielding a lot of questions around, financial services organizations where they're having to think through that equation in a much different way than they were doing before. I think there's a lot of opportunity. If I think of traditional branch models, they've been held back from a digital standpoint, somewhat purposely. But there's that hybrid where now they got to go in between. They have the physical branch, but they need some digital autonomy and some capability. And you've got to find a way to make that equation work. I think there's other things that I'll jump to, think of business processes that financial services underpin. Payments is one example where, immediately one of the things that happened was, which was atypical from historical things where there might be a rush to cash. Here, because of the pandemic that we're dealing with, it's a rush to no cash.
Yes, exactly.
I need to complete this transaction, but I need to do it contactless. And there's been a secular trend around the reduction of cash. That's accelerated through this period. If you look at the volume flows, it's accelerated, and I think it's going to stay that way. So there. And then the last one I might comment would be, think of two things that I'm thinking of. Really, one would be the traditional commercial or business banking sector. Their risk profile, their tolerance levels have changed.
Exactly.
If you're in the restaurant business, no good. If you're in retail, depending on which type of retail, online good, mainline, no good. Commercial banking, probably not so good as we go forward. So I think that dynamic, is going to be an interesting one. I'm going to get into that a little bit later. I think that's going to be a real interesting one to watch going forward.
Yeah, I think all the decisioning models need to be reworked, and we don't even know how to rework them because we don't know what the situation is going to be in 3, 6, 9 months. We are discussing about that. Is it everyone goes back, or is it we are actually not going back. And then to your point, what does it mean retail, restaurant, or self? So it's an interesting place to be. Regarding new regulations and policies, you have deep expertise in compliance through your solutions that you're providing to financial services. What do you see in terms of new regulations maybe coming up to support the changes that we've seen in the past?
Yeah. Well, and I think in any jurisdiction, the financial services organizations underpin the health of the economy. They enable flows of money to be made available for investment. And one of the things, if I look back on Canada, at least in what happened a decade ago with the mortgage issue and the credit crisis, Canada was in a strong foundation position, was able to keep the credit taps open. That certainly helped their economy.
Yeah.
We need, the banks, the governments at all levels, local businesses working together in harmony to get through this period healthily, I think that's a word, but certainly trying to restore areas of business that have either been completely shut down or been materially affected. So if I go back to restaurants, never the best investment, but so important to our economy, so important to our culture. We need financial services organizations to invest in them going forward.
Mm-hmm.
We need governments doing that. And that, to me, is the biggest one that I'm looking for, because it's got to go hand in hand with government regulation. To be fair to the financial institutions, they can't underpin all risk going on.
Exactly.
They need to do it in harmony. And I think US, Canada, North America, across the globe, they're all going to have that similar challenge.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. And it's really looking top down. What are we trying to achieve, and saving the jobs as well, because if you've been working in the restaurant industries of all your life and suddenly, well, that's what do you do, so there is also all this training for future employees of other sectors. So that's another point. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And then, if you extend that out, where are the opportunities here? Certainly COVID has exposed interesting, new and different business models or considerations that warrant, super fast investment in, that banks are going to be interested in and underpin. We're on Zoom. Think of the amount of business going on in this channel that didn't happen, 4 months ago, 5 months ago in the same way. It was there, but face-to-face would have been more prevalent, hopping on a plane more prevalent. The business model, the people model, the culture model is changing, and how does the regulatory and the drivers that government want to instill in that regulatory framework make a difference and change? Open banking might be one, and it certainly has been at force on the financial services sector. I've been trying to convince myself a little bit that COVID is going to drive more in a faster pace in areas where it hasn't. Certainly North America's lagged relative to Europe in that regard. And I think you can convince yourself that some more regs are going to come down faster, because the need for digital, the need to have better digital, more integration with different capabilities is certainly something I can see on a faster horizon than maybe it would have been, earlier this year.
Yeah. That's and I agree with you. It might look like a slowdown now, but to catch up faster. So overall, it would have been an acceleration. So I'm absolutely with you on that one. In terms of global financial stability, obviously, well, we are seeing tons of debt everywhere around the globe from sovereign countries. You're seeing protectionism with, reshoring of the supply chain, which is interesting, because when you're talking about Zoom calls, I've never connected with so many people from outside Canada than now. And in parallel, we're talking about, being more, not necessarily Canada, but countries are talking about being more protectionism. So it has never been as easy, but at the same time, it might not be as prevalent as before. So what's your thought on this global financial order?
Wow, a lot of smart people are talking about this and thinking about this. much smarter than me, so I do appreciate the question. You know, I think a few things. I worry in the short term that, you know, certainly politics are going to get in the way of really working through some of the things. You know, if I look at our you know, U.S. Partner down south, big challenge there is they're going into an election period, which is a polarizing event in and of itself, let alone COVID.
Yeah, yeah.
My hope is that, you know, we get beyond that with them, you know, certainly as one of our key partners in the world here, at least in Canada, and you work through that exercise to get to the point where there is more concrete stability. The fact of the matter is, this is a global issue. No one is unaffected by it. It's going to cause change. It's going to cause disruption. It's going to cause protectionism. And there might be some goodness that happens, not so much in the protectionism aspect of, but to build more agility and flexibility in where things are constructed. Because if a country has to be shut down and we need goods and services from that, for that thing, think of a bicycle. All right, people need bicycles right now. You can't find them.
Exactly.
And so we need some domestic capability to produce that. Every country needs that to a degree. And then the rest of it is kind of working through the considerations that, you know, allow you to protect your country, but allow you to conduct global business, which I still think is a good thing. You know, I do think that countries that were at a better financial spot are certainly in a better standpoint to handle this issue. It, knock on wood, it's temporary. It might go on to next spring, but hopefully we can start to get beyond that. And it'll hurt for a while, but hopefully we'll get beyond that.
Yeah. And it's going to be interesting to see how a country like Sweden fare compared
Indeed.
to the neighbors and countries like ours with didn't have more cases but don't have this massive amount of death that we have. So might be a food for thought for next wave.
Exactly.
Next wave, but it's still a good lesson to learn. In terms of resetting the competitive positioning, so obviously that has been a massive disruption in financial services like in any other industry. Massive disruption is good for challengers. Sometimes it's good for incumbents as well. What's your perspective on who's winning, who's losing
Yeah, I think, thanks, Peggy. I mean, I think who is winning are the people who went into this period with the best balance sheet. They're in a position where they can lean in and invest into the opportunities that are being exposed. The ones that are struggling and suffering, if you will, were the ones who did not have that strong balance sheet, that strong financial position. You know, I worry a little bit about the smaller fintechs, you know, myself included as a company. You know, we've actually been able to get through quite well because we've got a good base of business. It's diversified. We've been able to get through that. Somebody who is really just trying to get off the ground, great idea, great concept, but hasn't been able to pull through from the financial standpoint is who I worry about. Everybody we've talked to who has got a strong book of business is saying, okay, I got to think through things. I got to make sure that, you know, 3-6 months from now, my book of business isn't going to change. But if they're convinced of that, they're investing and they're going faster under the anticipation that they can get further market share in the segments that they compete in. And I think there's going to be some winners and some losers here. Which ones I predict on my horse race, I may not disclose in this forum, but I certainly see some winners and losers from my perspective.
Yeah. And obviously you're extremely familiar with digital transformation in financial services. That's your bread and butter for many years. What do you see is happening in financial institutions in terms of digital transformation?
Well, they have agendas, and you know, it's an interesting one for me because I think everywhere that I start to study their transformation agenda, they are trying to pursue, the bigger ones anyway, an alternate pathway that gives them more latitude to compete in the marketplace, but not be impeded by their legacy, which is their legacy is who they are. There's nothing wrong with that. The legacy process, the legacy structures, the legacy technology is both the bane and the boon, if you will, of what they're dealing with. And so they're creating these innovation arms to allow them to more freely compete, less restricted, to find those new markets faster, to compete against the big tech companies, I think predominantly, which would be the Googles, the Amazons, the Apples, as well as, you know, foreign entrants, where foreign entrants can play and try to participate. And it's creating whole new battlegrounds. You know, I'm very knowledgeable about the payments battleground, and it's fascinating, the ability to go from what was for, you know, hundreds of years just a commodity product. It's cash, it's check, it didn't change a lot, and now it's a vital battleground for winning and sustaining market share as you go forward. So that's, for me, a big watch one. And you know, there's a lot of competition, spending a lot of money trying to get at that in a different way.
Yeah. And what's interesting with payments, if you look at, you know, the first wave of fintech, maybe 10, 15 years ago, or maybe 10, 12 years ago, they were mainly focusing on payments and lending, because that's where you had the most money and the most efficiency. Now you have this second generation, or even sometimes third generation, attacking again payments and lending.
Exactly.
So I'm looking forward as well to seeing a bit more, and I think they probably learned as well from previous you know, mistakes in terms of being just one small solution and not a company, or a solution looking for a problem.
Right, exactly.
Around. So I think we're going to see a very good crop of new companies.
Exactly.
And if I look at the last question, which is probably the lightest of all the questions. So what have you changed in your life during COVID? Did you pick up new wonderful habits for 2020?
I'm still working on that, Peggy. You know, I would say the biggest thing that's changed in my life, and it's really my family's life. So we've got 3 boys. Their ages, you know, 20, 19, and 16. And you can imagine a household that was crazy for so long. Every night you're rushing out to this or that, this sport, that thing. And what COVID has done is allow us to have a family dinner, you know, 7 days a week, and had not happened ever, ever. And I know my wife and I enjoy it. The family conversations are wonderful at the table, and I know it won't last forever. But that, to me, has been the biggest thing that that's changed in my life.
That's wonderful. I've heard actually multiple people telling me about the family dinner. They also tell me about the drawback, which might mean, you know, more interruption. Your sons are older enough that you're probably absolutely not interrupted. The people were telling me that I'm like younger children, but the family dinner, it's absolutely wonderful. You're like, did we need that to realize we needed this connection? But you know what? Let's make the most of the situation. So that's great that your family is enjoying that time together.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been wonderful.
Well, thank you so much, Chris, for taking the time and for sharing your thoughts, and really appreciated having you with us today, actually.
Well, it's been great, Peggy. I appreciate your time, and it was a wonderful conversation.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.